You know, I looked at a lot of tech in 21, like a lot. But Jason, what tech did you actually pick up in 21? What became part of your everyday tech carry? So let's take a look. It's gonna be a mix of high tech, low tech, and stuff that isn't really tech at all, but I'm into it nonetheless. TextBlaze, a Chrome extension for managing bits of canned text. Canned text isn't a new concept really, but historically it's been something that's built into specific apps. The party trick with TextBlaze is it's a Chrome extension, so you can unfurl your text anywhere in a web browser. So how do I use this? Well, think of all the boilerplate explainers you've had to give people lately. Things like K2, K3 reporting. Where's my ERC refund? The state of the IRS. Maybe canned bits of text you use when you deliver returns. Instructions for how to make payments to the IRS online. Tons of stuff. You can build those out into canned bits of text you can reuse over and over again. Before you know it, you're gonna have a really helpful library of stuff you can use throughout the day. I don't have time to do all that. You do, you really do. But if you don't, you can create TextBlaze teams and share your snippets. Ooh, specific wording you'd like your staff to use? Got that one person who's really good at written communication? Crowdsource some snippets? Turn everyone into a canned text wizard. Thunderbolt everything. This isn't particularly novel, but I've just stopped buying anything that doesn't have Thunderbolt support. So I'm not gonna buy a display without Thunderbolt support anymore. I'm just using Thunderbolt docks, and it just makes life so much easier. A single cord to connect your laptop to display, power, and any other USB devices that are plugged into that. Now the downside is right now, there are a lot of fiddly compatibility issues with Thunderbolt. That can be a real headache to navigate, but when it works, it's glorious. Single cord for all things. This thing from Home Depot. You ever get a thing to organize your fiddly little things, and then you organize those fiddly little things, and you're like, I need 4 more of these things because I have too many fiddly things. I'm that guy. Especially doing video, I have all sorts of batteries and lens covers and all that stuff on top of the cord hell that most of us live in. But this guy, nice, right? If only you could, there's more. Yep. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you got some big boys down here, and there are 3 rows of these. But that's not all. It's the same thing on the other side. It's the same thing on the other side though. So super handy word of warning, if you have toddlers, absolute mayhem if you leave them alone with it, and your stuff will never be organized the same way again. So don't do that. The wheel. Technically not a new invention, but I've taken to putting wheels on everything. Like everything. Result is your entire desk set up as mobile. Sometimes you get cords under the wheels and it's not actually mobile. That's neither here nor there. But when your desk is on wheels, you get your cord management down. I'm down to now just having a single cord coming off my desk for power. And that's it. It is nice. Repositioning your desk from time to time, no big deal. Besides the cord being under the wheel thing, moving it around for videos. If you're in a shared office space, this can be really handy for scooching your desk around to work with different colleagues. It just makes everything feel a little less permanent, you know? Like at a moment's notice, you could just pack up and start a new life. Desk hooks. You may be noticing a trend here. I like bolting in my desk. And the desk hook is a logical extension of that. There are just so many helpful things you can put on a desk hook. I have them on all of my desks now. I am so into them that I will be honest with you, I'm actually thinking about buying a second desk hook for all of those desks. I know, what an absolute madman. Quieter computer fans. Listen, my desktop had no chill, but the reason it had no chill is the fans suck and are super, super loud. Open up the computer and plug and unplug things, you say? Yeah, it's like really easy. Like genuinely anybody can do this. So most business computers just have the cheapest fans imaginable, especially if you're buying Dells. So treat yourself. Crack open that computer, not hard to do. Unplug it, unplug it, and then crack it open. Figure out the size of the fans that you have. Do some Googling and you're gonna see a bunch of options like this Noctua for ultra quiet fans. 10 out of 10 recommended. Vertical laptop holder. Vertical laptop. This one actually holds 2. As it turns out, if your laptop is vertical, it takes a lot less space than when it's flat. What? This one specifically is from Oaky Wood. Okie wood. Microsoft Power Automate. I'm not a Microsoft guy. I'm really not. For the last 5 years or so, their MO's just kind of been to be 2 or 3 years behind the company actually innovating in a space. And eventually they create a copycat that still is actually pretty bad. See Zapier, Slack, Notion, the list goes on. But what they're doing right now is making RPA, robotic process automation, accessible. RPA for most companies is still a big line item, and people don't like the notion of cutting a big check to get access to RPA. That's kind of always been the RPA sales model. But now Microsoft, at $40 a month, have a relatively compelling RPA option. Now this thing, when it came out a couple of years ago, was bad, real bad. Didn't really support much outside the Microsoft ecosystem. And you had like your base and then your premium apps that you gotta pay more for, which just drives me nuts. But personally, I'm a big believer in RPA, particularly in tax work, because we have all these stinky old tax softwares that don't integrate with anything. We have taxing jurisdiction websites coming online. They also don't integrate with anything. And the solution to integrating those systems is RPA, UI-based automation, where it's pulling stuff from the actual program. The tier that actually matters here, where most of you are probably gonna live, is $40 a month. Not bad. Lavalier mics. When I think lav mic, I always think of like the preacher with the little transparent thing curling around his cheek. The batteries always run dead midway through the sermon, and he's like slapping that little black box hanging off his belt. But as it turns out, most movie productions, characters are mic'd up with lav mics. Now today's boom mics, the over-the-top ones, or shotgun mics, seem to be the cool kid creator tool of choice, but man, they are a pain. You gotta have a giant C-stand coming up over your desk. You can't move out of the shot, otherwise as soon as you do, the audio starts falling off. Did you notice that it didn't? I'd show you my lav mic, but it's under my clothes. But with lav mics, are much, much less money. You can get great audio quality, and if you're worried about looking like a dork, you can hide it under your shirt or something. AKA, where's Jason's lav mic? A lot of tape. A couple things to keep in mind with lav mics. Many of them benefit from equalization tuning, or EQ. So for example, what comes out of my lav mic right now is pretty flat, but with a little bit of tuning, sounds way better. For example, here's the difference with and without EQ. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. The cheapest path to good quality audio, lav mics. So depending on the context in which you need recording. It's like a live Zoom call. You're obviously not gonna be able to do like EQ live unless you have a separate piece of hardware that does that, but then that kind of defeats the purpose of simplicity. But if you're trying to shoot videos that you're gonna distribute to your clients, and you're already using some sort of video editing software, most of them can do that to spice up your audio. They have some EQ effect. So, cheapest path to great quality audio, lav mics. Write it down, tell your friends, tell your mom. The new MacBook Pro. I've never been a Mac guy myself. First Mac I've owned in my life. These are the ones that made a big splash with the next gen M1 chips, and wowee. Everything about this piece of hardware is magnificent. It is a hefty boy. The display is light years ahead of any other laptop, and everything just works. They've finally gone away from the taking all of your ports away position. It's got all sorts of different ports. And if you're afraid of not knowing anything about Mac OS, it isn't actually that bad. The biggest headache for me has been remapping my brain to learn the keyboard shortcuts, which are a little different just because the keys are different. But this thing is truly a joy to use. I go home from using a PC all day, and when I open it up, it's just genuinely refreshing. It's that good. And I'm not an Apple guy. Stuff like the gymongous touchpad, the haptics when you click things with the touchpad, everything about it is just so polished. I love it. And as more of the apps we use are cloud-based, even the legacy apps like my tax software, it's all hosted. Whether you're on PC or Mac is not as big a deal as it once was. Branded link shorteners. Not particularly novel, but I've started using them a lot more this year. Specifically, I've been using Rebrandly. If you aren't familiar with the concept, basically you buy a shorter version of your domain, you set up these custom links, and then you can track how those links are used. So for example, with Launch for Accountants, the domain was launchfa.com. I bought the domain lfa.to, then set up these short URLs to track how people are navigating to that content. So how could you use this? Couple examples. Let's say you have a link to a blog post in your email signature. How many people are navigating to that blog post via your email signature versus via other means? Use a link shortener and you can see the traffic statistics for that specific link that you use in your signature. If your whole team has the same signature, you could use unique links for each team member. Another thing I did this year For a while I was running some live streams, and the painful thing about YouTube's live streams, same thing that applies to Zoom, that sort of thing. In most cases, it's going to generate a different URL for every event, and that's just a pain. Well, instead of that, I set up a short URL /stream. Then anytime I'm about to go live on that stream or webinar, I change the address of the short URL. I change where it redirects to, so the user can use the exact same short URL every single time. Then on the back end, I change where it points. Way easier for them to find that. And then like if your stream breaks, you have to spin up a new one. You don't have to then somehow get a link out to a whole bunch of people. You just update that short link. Lots of cool use cases there, just something I found useful this past year. New backpack, I'm rolling the Timbuk2 Vapor. So in 21, I switched from being a briefcase guy to a backpack guy. And when you first make that switch, you feel a little bit like a middle schooler walking into a professional environment. And I grappled with that. But wowee, let me tell you, I will never go back. This one fits both my work laptop and my other work laptop. This one isn't a massive bag. I'm not ready to be that guy with a giant backpack with everything you need to survive for like 72 hours in the wilderness. I generally avoid any sort of situation where I need extra underwear. So it isn't that, but I really like this one. It also gives you a bunch of different like carrying options. It's got like tote straps, traditional backpack straps, which can be handy when your hands are full with other stuff. Relay Financial. I don't want to sound like a total Relay fanboy, and I'm not even going to talk about using Relay with clients. I just want to talk about myself. I've got my own business set up in Relay, and wowee, is it just a breath of fresh air. I don't personally run a business that's going to be dependent on financing, on relationship banking. So just about everything about Relay just makes my life easier. User management is super simple. You just add team members, define what level of permission they need. It's almost like, what am I looking for? Oh, how every bank should be. It's got an actual API for the banking data if you want to use that. Rock solid feeds that pull in actually richer data than you usually get from most banks, and they just don't break because the Plaid integration with Relay is an API to API integration, not a bot that's gonna hop in and as soon as the UI changes, it breaks. That's it, I like it. Lemon Perfect. I am drinking the heck out of this stuff right now. It's so good. Just a little more sophisticated than water, you know? For when you're thirsty, but you want to generate more plastic waste. The new Dell XPS 13. It's fine. About as good as PC laptop hardware gets today, unless you go mega expensive. It's about $600 less than my MacBook, but still packed to the gills with Dell bloatware. Within a few days of this thing being brand new, for some reason it was taking over a minute to boot up. It still does. I don't know why. It has an NVMe SSD. It ought to take like 10 seconds to boot up, but it doesn't. Couldn't tell you why, even though it's brand new. But it's fine. A downside to the PC ecosystem relative to the MacBook Pro ecosystem that I think is often overlooked is that in my experience, the MacBook accessories have been much more stable, and it's not really anybody's fault. So for example, if you're getting a Thunderbolt dock and you want it to work, there are a cajillion Thunderbolt PC laptops and comparatively few MacBooks. Today, you can go to Amazon and find all kinds of Thunderbolt docks that say they work with PCs, and it's like 50-50 whether it'll actually work with yours. 50-50 may even be generous. But the equivalent on the Apple side is you got a bit of hardware that says it supports this specific generation of MacBook, because there aren't that many, and the 1,000 people who bought it before you on Amazon have validated that it actually works with that generation of MacBook. Compared to on the PC side, if you're looking at a dock for your PC, the 1,000 people that bought it before you were using hundreds of different computers. So they're not really validating that it's going to work on yours. Even going from last gen XPS to the current XPS, different stuff worked, some stuff didn't. It's just kind of an annoying state of affairs with PC right now. Etsy, excuse me, hear me out. The 3D printing scene on Etsy right now is hot, like hot. And honestly, the premise of 3D printing we were sold on like 10 years ago, and may actually be services like Etsy that bring that stuff to life. And I will give you a great example. So I'm trying to get everything mounted to my desk so that at a moment's notice, I can. You remember. So I've got this Thunderbolt dock and I want to mount it to the underside of my desk. The dock itself doesn't have any mounting points. So you pop out to Etsy, search for this model of dock, and wouldn't you know it, somebody has made just the thing you need. So they've modeled and printed something specifically for this model of dock. And just look at how perfect it is. Like it snaps on, inch perfect. Nope.
24 hours later.
Inch perfect. You can't pull it out the front, so when you're unplugging cables, it's not gonna slide out. And I just love that. It's like perfect for this exact model, almost custom for me. It's great. Like what a great way to use Etsy. Scribe Pro. You've seen me talk about this one quite a bit before. The quickest and easiest way to put together little visual explainers with screenshots of each of those steps. And with Pro, it even works across your desktop apps. You can redact sensitive info from screenshots. Comes up a lot in what we do. So let's say you have a process that spans across multiple apps, cloud and desktop. In a single scribe, you can show that entire process. You can redact anything client specific or sensitive, and then reuse that scribe as many times as you want. Send it to other people, but only make it once. Super handy. Now, Scribe is $30 a month per user. I can stomach that for myself, but for my entire team, but I'd say this, we like to anchor what we expect to pay for apps relative to the cost of other apps. So for example, Loom costs me $8 a month, and that makes Scribe seem outrageous, right? But is that really the case? Does the fact that Loom costs $8 a month make Scribe not worth $30 a month? Or are those two things completely unrelated? I feel like it's the latter, but I still have a hard time putting like 40 people on Scribe right now. LedgerSync. So LedgerSync right now has a golden opportunity. HubDoc has said they're gonna stop doing bank statement fetching, which, can we just sidebar on this? That sucks. There was a time when HubDoc was everything accountants needed. It was broken sometimes, it was broken most of the time, but it was solving a really hard problem to solve, and at its best, it could be an outrageously powerful tool for accountants. Now, Xero comes in, buys HubDoc, starts including a HubDoc license with certain Xero plans, but have seemingly done nothing with the product since then. And now you could actually argue that product may even be going backwards, which is concerning because QuickBooks looks to be building aspects of what HubDoc does into the QuickBooks core experience. While Xero right now has this kind of sidecar companion app, it doesn't really seem like it's going anywhere. Anyways, LedgerSync. Statement and transaction fetching, that's been LedgerSync's jam from day one. I've always felt like they kind of lived in HubDoc's shadow, but today, if you want an accounting ledger agnostic tool to do this job for you, not a lot of other options out there. So how did I start using LedgerSync this year? I started using it specifically in the context of getting my staff access to banking activity in a centralized hub. So we all hate having to manage our own access to the client's banking. LedgerSync's actually a helpful way to sidestep this. Connect all of your clients to LedgerSync and then give your staff granular access to LedgerSync instead of the bank itself. That's super handy. It means not exposing any client credentials to your staff, especially important if you're working with offshore staff. Now, inside of LedgerSync, we can see live balances. You can see all of the transaction history. And for some banks, it'll even pull in check images. It will be really interesting to see how this whole kind of category progresses, like what it looks like 5 years from now. If it's something Plaid could solve, for example. Today, they only seem interested in helping developers, or if apps like LedgerSync are gonna see a ton of growth. Paper backdrops. If you do a lot of video, eventually you get bored of your own setup and you wanna change up that look a little bit. Enter the humble paper backdrop, color on a roll, and a lot easier than painting. It actually has a cool like matte look to it on video. Now you could caveman this and literally just cut some off, tape it to the wall. Totally haven't done that. Or do something like what I've got here now. I've got basically a metal rack that holds 3 rolls at a time, and you can raise and lower any of those rolls independently with like a fire station garage door opener. You know what I'm talking about, like the metal, big long metal chain thing. Under desk computer mounts. I got one right here. Now, to the guy in the comments that's like, oh, I was doing that in 1985. I get it, not novel, but has become like a mandatory part of my desk setups. The reason is I love sit-stand desks, but a headache with sit-stands is cable management. The length the cable needs to be is different, whether you're standing or you're sitting, but when your computer moves with your desk, it all moves together. It enables that whole single cord desk setup where everything you need is attached to your desk, and you just got a single power cord coming off. You know, maybe we need like a battery setup. Go totally off grid. That's not what off grid means. Go totally off desk infrastructure. So here's what we do. We get one of those Powerwall battery banks, right? We put it on a sit-stand desk frame. That would work. That's a stupid idea. Notion. It's really hard to explain what Notion is. So if you don't know, go ask somebody else. But it completely took over my life in 2021 because I adopted what the super cool productivity people would call a life operating system. And it's the best way I found to manage all of the things that I do. Work, personal life, work 2, work 3. I'm a fan of the more narrative productivity tools like this, rather than just the to-do list types of tools, because the narrative tools are more helpful for building context around those to-dos. They're focused on authorship. rather than just the to-dos. So you can still do traditional writing, like calendar views, embedding stuff from other tools into that narrative, and then even like share aspects of that with colleagues while still having those traditional to-do like type of interactions. Where it's really powerful for me, and you can probably relate here, is when you have a bunch of different systems with various to-dos in them. So your work email, team chat, your project management system, your personal to-do list, your text messages, that text from your wife. You don't need to keep reminding me. It takes a lot of time and effort to prioritize one of those lists, your email, for example. But if you have to prioritize all of those different channels separately and then somehow merge all of those into like a single list of priorities, that is virtually impossible because they all live in disparate systems. And that's where you end up in those situations where you're completely overwhelmed, you're just doing stuff, but you have no idea if that's what you should actually be doing. Now, how I use Notion is to pull all that stuff together, regardless of if it's in my firm, in my personal life, my accountant community, YouTube, Twitter. I start my day with a single unified set of priorities. And that's a really nice place to be. A color checker. The reason your video sucks is color. I challenge you, go out and buy a color checker. Send me a video of you on your crappy webcam. Hold up the color checker at some point, and I will show you how webcams just absolutely destroy color. Out of the box, the color on webcams is just so bad. Now, in my early DSLR videos, shot on a camera with the exact same sensor as this, they looked bad, like really bad. What gives this shot a nice signature look is the framing, camera height relative to the desk, camera height relative to my eye line, and the color profile. And the color checker makes setting up that color profile really easy for a muggle like me. I did a 12-part video series on this stuff, kind of how to make good video for a normie non-video person. I'll put a link to that if you want to go deeper. Okay, this is a somewhat personal topic, but I'm gonna get into it. Let's talk about how you're managing your underdesk. What? Underdesk. A few different types of people out there. You've got the Highlander. You're flapping in the breeze without anything under your desk to manage cables. You're letting it all hang loose. I think most of us start here until we develop a certain sense of professional propriety. The Cage Fighter. You bolt some sort of metal contraption to the underside of your desk because that's gonna be the solution for all the danglies. The first time you set it up, it's great, high and tight. But the moment you want to change or move something, it's hell because everything's cable managed. You got to undo it all, and before you know it, you've unpacked the whole thing and you're back to square one. The Kangaroo. You've discovered modesty shields. Congratulations. Now the solution is for your desk to go around with a giant pouch in its front. You just stuff anything and everything into that pouch. It's a solution, albeit far from elegant. What I've just described has been my journey over the last few years. I'm not sure if anybody else actually did that, but I'm on to a fourth approach now, the Grid. This one's from Oakeywood, the same place I got that laptop stand we looked at earlier, and it's just a rigid metal grid, almost like a sheet metal version of a modesty pin. And you seemingly get the best of the Cage Fighter and the Kangaroo. Now, what especially interested me about this was the ability to hard mount stuff to it. So I got a lot of stuff bolted to the underside of my desk. You've got your computer, your battery backup, a big power strip for accessories, Thunderbolt dock, laptop potentially, but you can't actually fit that much stuff to the underside of your desk, especially with a sit stand like this where you've got the controller and all that. And that's where the rack effectively increases the total mounting surface area of your underdesk. I'm not sure if it'll actually stick or not. We'll see. So that's the accounting tech I adopted in 2021, most of which was not really accounting tech. What was your favorite pickup of 21? A bit of software, something else? Drop it in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, check out this video where I covered the best new tech the accounting profession got in 2021. More like software, less like how to strap a bunch of stuff to your desk. Teleprompter hasn't started. You can create text blip. Oh. And the color checker, what? Oh, ow. Ooh. Then anytime I'm about, back. Now I need the solution for, I was thinking about doing an Australian accent. You discovered modesty shields. Oh boy.